get out and I make sure that people understand that, you know, the unexpected victim is about somebody that you would look at and just be like, there's no freaking way, you know? Um, it's a way to teach people that when you're in line at the convenience store and the person in front of you is taking a long time, give them a break. You don't know what they're going through. Um, you know, Nobody's going to ever look at me, Janine, and be like, "There's the rape survivor."
You can't
I'm
judge
six
a
foot.
book by its cover. I mean, how many people are going through life and they're upbeat and perky and happy, and you think they have no clue about what's going on in the real world? Well,
Yep.
maybe we
Yep.
do, but
Yep.
that is one way we're coping with it.
Well, and so because like I'm 6'2", I'm just over 300 pounds. I still just today was bench pressing 500 pounds. Like I'm still like this physical specimen, and so nobody ever expects me to be that. And so I get out and I talk about it because, for one, when I get out and I'm like I'm a rape survivor, everybody just looks at me and goes, "There's no freaking way," and everybody forgets for 5 seconds that at one point in time I was a kid.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it blows their mind because then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh my god! At one point in time he was this tall. At one point in time
He was
he was
vulnerable.
an innocent child," and that's when it happened. Um, there's been a lot of other stuff that has happened, Janine, that, like recently, I just found out I haven't spoke to my mom in 20 years. I haven't spoke with my brother in 15.
Okay,
Um,
good.
I haven't spoke to my father in 20 years. And just yesterday, I got a message from my niece, who I'd only met once before the day she was born. I held her.
Okay.
She sends me a message via social media, and she's like, "You asked me to keep you up to date, but your dad just had a massive stroke. Um, he can no longer speak. He can't play music anymore, and it's not good." And I'd always questioned how I would handle this information because, as human beings go, the linear line is your parents go before you do, right? So I mean, like that's just the way it's supposed to go. And I'd always questioned myself, like, what would I do if that did happen? Like, how would I feel about
Okay.
it? Because
Okay.
these people really weren't family. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And you have, let's go over with the audience. He left your mom. He was paying child support. Did he interact at all with you, or just paid the child support? What
Really,
happened?
really, kind of just paid the child support. Um,
And
we
wasn't there?
Yeah, we went over every other weekend, but he hung out with my brother, and just left me do what I was gonna do.
Why are your
Um,
parents singling you out once again? Why?
well, because so I didn't know this until I got out of jail, and I confronted my dad. My dad, the night of my conception was the day that my dad came back from Vietnam, and he had made a layover in his hometown before he went back to Alaska. Met his high school sweetheart, fell in love with her again, then was sent to Alaska because that's where he was supposed to go. Um, and a one night dalliance with my mom made me. And so he even told me there was a lot of bitterness against me because I was the thing that had trapped the woman he was going to leave.
And so did he stay for a little while or and then leave, or
He stayed for the 6 years. And and that's why our relationship was so bad, was because he held that 6 years against me, because like obviously it couldn't have been his fault. You know what I mean? So, you know,
don't blame
that,
other people, especially a child, for your mishaps.
yeah.
Really. If
Well,
you really wanted to leave, you could have left.
You would think it's common sense.
Do you know what I'm saying? If you want to leave, then leave.
Yep.
You're free to do that. You're
Yep.
not in a country where you're trapped, you
Yep.
could leave. And then
Well,
that way you're not blaming your child.
well, in his defense, and it's very, very minute defense, he was raised in a different era, where if you got the girl pregnant, you didn't get married, you didn't get divorced, you stuck it out. You know what I mean? Um,
And I
and so,
get that. God bless you
yeah,
for doing that. But if you're going
yeah,
to resent your child or resent your
yeah,
situation, absolutely not.
yeah, just
What's
get out.
worse,
Yeah, just get out. You know what I
thinking
mean?
to blame your child for being trapped than to cut yourself off, and to
Yeah.
me that is the better choice.
Yep. No, and so these things. This is all that happened, and I got out of jail. That's another long story, but I got
So
out of
you didn't
jail, and
find out the truth about why they resented you, or why he resented you, excuse me,
yeah.
until
Well,
after.
so I got to this. I found out why, and for a long time, I still felt like I needed to make up to it. You know what I mean? I needed to make amends, and then I started therapy in Boston, and David Shannon, my therapist in Boston, literally saved my life because I was drinking, I was doing all kinds of stupid stuff. I mean, like
Escape
I was
and
a small
self-medication.
town kid. Yeah, well, I was a small town kid with a good job, making great money in a Boston. You know what I mean? Like without any large town experience or anything like that. So I was doing the typical, stupid drinking every night, driving drunk, sleeping with, one night stands, just doing everything dumb. And I
Detached.
got into a relationship with this girl who was one of those, she's like one of those instigator girlfriends. You know what I mean? Like she kind of like always had to have she would always start a fight. And so that you guys could have makeup sex. You know what I mean? Like it was just every single time, like,
Functional.
yeah, yeah. And so one day she's yelling at me, and I'm just sitting there, just like whatever, because I'm completely disassociated, right? And she's like, "You have zero passion in your life, and you suck." And I was just like, "Yeah, whatever." You know what I mean? Like I was just like, whatever. Which was kind of funny because she was talking to me about having zero passion, and I was just like, whatever. You know what I mean? But like, I was just like, well, I just proved your point,
And maybe
stewardess.
that's why she was trying to be aggressive with the arguing, is because she was looking for that.
Yeah, she was looking for some kind of passion, some kind of heat. And so
But it was the
she was
wrong
an
way
airline,
of going about it.
yeah.
Go ahead.
But so she was an airline stewardess, and for me that was like the perfect relationship at the time because like she'd come into town for 3 or 4 days, and just
And
like
then she
every
flying
yeah,
the
so
friendly
like
skies.
yeah, I was like, I'm flying this thing with a happy smile. So she leaves, and what she said to me really stuck with me. And so I'm at the house, and I'm just drinking. I got a bottle of rum. I'm 3 sheets to the wind, and I'm like, why the hell don't I have passion? Like, what? When did that go away? When do I remember having a passion? When do I remember?
It was almost like an awakening, even
Yeah,
though
it's like
the
when was the
relationship
last time?
wasn't the best.
It was like
It,
when was the last time I was passionate but not angry? When was the last time those things were not mutually exclusive to each other? And it dawned on me. It was before I was 6. And then all that happened. And I was like, I've never seen anybody about the rape. I've never seen anybody about anything. I mean, I'd seen anger management. I had done, stuff to try to calm down and meditate and all this, and
but
none
you
of it was
weren't getting
working.
to the root of the problem.
And so I made a call to the Boston area rape crisis center and had the worst experience of my life there.
Jeez.
Because like I get there and it's up the second flight of stairs. So I took the red line to the Boston area rape crisis center, got off 2 stops before the crisis center because I didn't want anybody to know I was getting off at the rape crisis center.
Oh.
Walked the 2 blocks, walked up the stairs to the waiting room, sat down in those you'll remember these. Remember the god awful fake green leather chairs with the brass pins? Do you remember all those?
Oh yeah.
So they had those, and I sit in one of the chairs, and off to the left of me, there's 4 ladies in an office, and each one of them individually comes out and looks at me, and this is not bias, this is not anything other than just gospel truth from the way I remember it. They look at me, Janine. Every one of them comes out one at a time and goes, "Can we help you, sir?" And then I'm like, I'm waiting for my therapist. And they're like, "Oh, does he know you're here?" I'm like, "Yeah." So there were these 4 ladies that just did not want a man in their space, and so I told that to my therapist, David. He went to bat for me, and every time I went there, I was completely ignored until they told David I was there. They wouldn't talk to me. They wouldn't interact with me. So it got to a point where
What, a
I ended
man
up going to the same place that told
can't
another
get
male
raped?
survivor.
No wonder your title is your title.
Yep. So this is the same place that told another male survivor on the Bristol Cone project with me that when he called there, they said we don't help rapists, we help survivors.
What?
So they said that to another male survivor. Um, they didn't say that about me. They just didn't want me in their space.
Okay.
But
That's
that's an
pretty
example of how.
going
Yeah,
friend, I guess, in that facility.
yeah,
Which
and so that's how a lot of males are perceived.
and that's so sad because rape is about control. It's not
Yeah,
about how you dress. It's not about how you look. It's not about how you carry yourself. The
nope,
common denominator is
yeah. Well, the common denominator is just an act. You know what I mean? On the
thank you.
Yeah. So like, but even to this day, Janine, I am a state certified trauma informed, trauma trained peer support specialist
Oh wow.
with almost 5 years experience working with peers on trauma. And I went to the local rape crisis center here to see if I could get a peer support job to help my fellow survivors. And by the director was told, we won't hire a guy.
What?
Now, what am I going to do? Because reputation is everything. I can't sue the crisis center because how much of a jerk does that make me look like?
So
You know
now
what
we're
I
in
mean? Like,
another catch 22.
yep.
And that's so
So,
sad.
so I can't even help my fellow survivors because I'm male, because they won't even hire me. You know what I mean? Like, so there's a lot of stuff. But one of the things that David Shannon did for me was I'll never forget because I was in this long 45-minute diatribe of how my family sucked, right? And he stops me and he's just like, Brian, do you know what the best thing to do with cancer is sometimes? I was like, what, David? Like, this is like, why would you just ask me this question randomly? Like, I was just telling you how bad my family sucked, right? And he looks at me and he goes, sometimes the best thing to do with cancer, Brian, is to cut it the F out.
Right. I agree with your therapist. And it doesn't mean that you don't forgive them. It doesn't mean that you have ill will towards them. You have to cut it off because you will
Yep.
continue with PTSD. They are just going to be toxic for you.
For the rest of my
Absolutely
life.
toxic. And you need that energy out of your life.
And so that advice I took to heart.
Because you
And
gave him so many chances. You gave your brother and your mother so many chances.
well,
And it's you're done. You're done. That's it. We're done
I
here.
I waited for about a month. You know what I mean? Like I was like, oh, one more try, one more thing, and I
Right.
got to meet her the day she was born. That kind of stuff. And then there's some other stuff that happened, and I was just like, you know what? This is cancer. I'm
Right.
out.
Right.
And so it's now been, um, it's damn near 19, 20 years since I've seen that side of the family. Um,
Do you
I
have
remember,
someone, do you have I can identify with this. Do you have someone in your life that is maybe a father and mother figure to you that you have would have to?
I've never been in a serious relationship since my my broken engagement.
Oh,
Um,
that's awful.
uh, yeah, it just, there's a lot of those issues are probably mine on the self-esteem front, but um,
Are you still in
I
therapy?
was up until last year. I had a and the hits keep coming. I About 4 years ago in 2015, I went to go. No, 2016. I was going to go I was going to start school for art therapy. I was in the sign up room, hitting the email, trying to get all that stuff done right. And we had a gunman on campus incident that day, and the that sent my PTSD off
Oh
like you
no.
would not. So like I ushered everybody into a room, got them safe. I took the door. I was willing to die, um, because like I'd had enough. You know what I mean? And I remember sitting there at the foot of the door in case the guy came in, thinking to myself like, and this is years later now, Janine, thinking to myself, one of my mom's favorite things to me was, "You're useless and you're a worthless failure."
Oh, that's the most awful thing to say to a child.
Well,
Awful.
I'm sitting there at the foot of the door waiting to get shot, and I'm thinking to myself, "See, mom, I have value."
Right.
And that's, years later. I tried to make contact with my mom till I was about 34, and then I got a letter from my mom yelling at me because, of all things, Janine, you're going to get a kick out of this. She's yelling at me because I owe her $4,000.
What?
No idea.
What?
I have
For
no
what?
idea.
If anything, she owes you money and your
So,
brother because he was sex trafficking you.
so,
Don't forget about that. There's a lot
so,
of money to be owed to you.
so she's telling me because of like my adolescence angst, how like I'd break into the house and steal stuff, so I owe her that money and all that, right? So
I
at the very end of the
whole thing is
letter,
justified, and I do not encourage stealing at all
yeah,
whatsoever. They sex trafficked you and took your money. We all know the story.
yeah.
Unbelievable,
So
$4,000.
so my mom at the very end of the letter, she goes, she signs it, "Love, Mom. P.S. You're lucky you weren't deported." So I got that letter and I'm like, I'm done, right? Like I'm out. There's no more. I'm done. And so I haven't spoke to her in like 13, 14 years now. But here's the catch. Here's the funniest thing about this. And I didn't realize this until after I got out of jail and I confronted my dad again.
Your
So my
parents,
mom,
your parents should have been in jail, especially your mother and your brother.
so
Of course, he was a
my mom,
minor.
yeah,
He was
my mom threw me out at 15. Guess who never missed paying child support?
she owes big time. She owes big time.
But for 3 years, she got paid every month that I was not there.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So when I wrote her back, I was like, you know what? You're right. I probably do owe you the 4,000, but take it out of the 12 that you owe me.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for
So,
you. What?
you know,
She's so crazy. She doesn't even.
no, it'll never enter
It will
her
never
head.
dawn on her that
When
she
I
is
could,
you.
when I confronted her about the abuse, her saying was, "I did what I had to do to raise 2 kids. It doesn't matter you got hurt."
Uh,
So,
that's disgusting. It's
so
really despicable.
for your audience, and one of the things I do every morning now is I wake up, I have my dog Calypso, who is probably one of the greatest things that's ever happened to
Amazing
me.
that your dog is named Calypso. Bird, my macaw is Calypso.
Nice. So, um,
What are the odds?
so yeah. So I wake up every morning. Calypso comes and gives me a morning hug every morning.
Oh,
We get off the bed. I put her outside, and
that's my other.
during every time I wake up, I tell myself today is going to be better than yesterday.
Oh,
Because the reality is, there's no such thing as a time machine. So I'm not going to waste energy and time wishing for something that doesn't exist. I cannot go back in time and change what happened. It's already happened. But what I do have is I have the ability to make decisions better today than yesterday. So I get to decide how I handle this information every day. I get to make the decision that I am not the face of rape. I am a rape survivor. I am
right.
not the face of child abuse. I am just a child abuse survivor. And when I look at those and I look at this in a longer way, and I have this other way of, it's a mathematical equation that I came up with. There's no reason for me not to survive. Like, yes, I went through hell as a child, but if you look at it in a tangent linear line, I cannot let those moments of time outweigh the possible 76 years of a natural life.
Right. And
I
you
have
can
to
use
realize,
that anger as fuel, which you are with the art classes. Can you tell us a little bit about, the coping mechanisms that you do with the art classes and how therapeutic?
one of the things I started 4 years ago, 5 years ago almost now, is Survivor Nights, but Survivor KNIGHT, like Knights of Old. And we are a free show and a free art exhibit. We go nationwide. We've even gone international. We're going into Canada. And they're free to host, they're free to do. And it's called Survivor Nights because we look at trauma as a blanket statement, like an umbrella statement. Um, and so when I was coming up with this idea, Janine, it was the reality that if I was going to find a healing conversation with somebody, and if I was going to wait for another male survivor to come forward and speak their truth,
Okay.
I was going to wait a very long time because men don't speak about this. We keep this to ourselves, and it's literally the worst thing we can do. But we do it like better than anybody else. And so I realized that if I was going to have that healing conversation, I was going to have to wait for a very long time. So I do a deep dive into trauma, and I do a deep dive into what the word survivor means. And I realize that if you're a cancer survivor or a domestic violence survivor or a sex abuse survivor or even a heart attack survivor, the first 10 to 15 things in the hierarchy of needs of trauma across the board are the same. So we go through that same negotiation, the bartering, the anger, we go through all those things the same.
Right.
Um, so the sheer fact that I was going to wait for another male to come forward makes zero sense because I could sit there and have a conversation with a cancer survivor about the anger of acknowledgement of what they've gone through and what they're going through and find ways to heal through their story as I can help them with mine.
Right.
So I started Survivor Nights with that thought process that when we do art, whether that's 2D, 3D, spoken word, music, or whatever, that we weren't going to tell people we weren't going to, as a group, tell other people what other people's survivor stories were. So if you wanted to do the show and you had alluded to what happened to you at 16, if you wanted to do a piece and give a dissertation of what that piece meant to you, that was going to be the only way people would know that that's what that piece meant. So we put a cancer survivor up next to a sex abuse survivor, and we put a domestic violence survivor right next to an HIV diagnosis. We put all these things together so that when people come in, they realize that there's a community of survivors that understand
each other.
That it's not a segregated, oh, we're only cancer or we're only this. It's literally we are together because we have survived. And so the taglines for the show is, we don't care what you survived, we just care that you did. And then the other one is, communities create survivors, but stronger survivors create stronger communities. And so that's what we do the art for. With the art classes you're referring to, I actually, that's one of the ways I make money. I do art classes online. I teach people, and other survivors, but most of the way I make my money is through personal training for strength training, or through sales of my own art. I was hoping my book would do better, but
Well, maybe this video might launch. So let's get your book out. And also, do you know James Swift, right? You were speaking to him. That's how he connected us together, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you have him as your support system. And for those that know about James Swift, it's Rusted Rhinestones for him.
Yep. And that's a hard book to get through, so folks, be ready.
And I'm sure yours as well. And along with The Child Called It.
Well, so just to let you know, and this is not a one-up-man thing, it was an amazing thing. So I'm part of the Bristol Cone Project. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not. Let's tell the audience.
The Bristol Cone Project is set up by a group called 1 in 6, which is the number of male survivors. So it's 1 in 6 men will be sexually abused by the time they're 18 in this country. And so they did a worldwide event where male survivors come forward. They have a photo done. There's a bio, and they're coming forward. And I'm part of this Bristol Cone Project. This is worldwide. Okay, so like David Lezak, that's where I was going. David Lezak's the head of that. He's gone worldwide, and he's only found 250 men that are willing to come forward to do their story, and I'm one of them. Right? He comes to your town, and he does an interview, and he sits and he talks to you, and he takes the photographs and all this kinds of stuff. And I looked at him, I was like, man, so sorry to lay all that on you, David. And he's like, I got to tell you something, Brian. I'm like, what's that? He's like, I've heard your story before from other people that have gone through the same thing you've gone through. And I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. You know what I mean? Like, I know I'm not alone, right?
Right.
And he goes, there's one difference though, Brian. I'm like, what's that, David? And he goes, every person I've heard that story from is on death row right now.
Oh. Wow. That's so sad, but I'm so glad that you have just punched through and survived, and you have beautiful coping mechanisms that you're dealing with. You've gone to therapy. It's always good to go to therapy. I should probably get it when this whole thing blows over. I'll put myself in therapy again. It doesn't hurt to learn new tools, or if you have a relationship issues, or whatever it is.
Therapy's not a 6-month relationship, but it's a lifetime.
It is a lifetime.
And it's worth it. It really. I always tell people this, Janine, and I think if there's anything that you're going to say for this video, I hope it's this. I get asked on a regular basis, was therapy easy? Did it make everything better? And I'm not one of those people that's going to BS people. So I always look at them and be like, look, there are going to be days it's going to suck.
Right.
There are days you're not going to want to get out of bed. There are days when it's going to be worse. There are going to be days that when you get up, you're just like, no, there's just no way. But I can promise you this. if you find the courage and the will to get up and go, and you get through those sessions, at the end of it, it's all worth it. Every moment was worth it.
I agree. That's
To,
awesome. I have a couple of things to go over. One of them is, can you tell children who are being abused where they should go? What should they do if they're in a situation and they're being abused in their home, or they're being abused at school, or wherever they are? What should they do? What are some of the steps?
So they should report. They should report.
If someone is not believing you about your story, this is pretty important.
Yeah.
Then go to another.
Go to another one. Keep reporting.
Keep going.
And not to make kids heroes, but when they do report, that's exactly what they become. Because we know nationally that a pedophile is not stopped until their victims get into the 3 digits. So if a kid reports as soon as something happens and keeps reporting until somebody does something, that child has possibly just saved hundreds of other kids.
Exactly.
And look, and if they don't, they're not responsible for the other victims. But the reality is, if they do report, the quicker we can put these people away.
Right. If they could do it to you, then they can do it to other children.
Yeah. And if you can't report, again, it's not, the other victims aren't your fault. That was, so it's at the very end of my book, the last page, it's the last line in the book. And, you macaw. At the very last page, I wrote a letter to myself, apologizing for the things that I felt like I was responsible for. And I wrote it back to when I was 6 years old. And at the very end of the letter, and this part always gets me, and I still get emotional about it. I go through everything and I go, love Brian / me. And I go, P.S. we become a superhero. Because comic books, like as a kid, I kept waiting for somebody to come in and save me.
Right.
Nobody came.
You saved you. You saved you.
So
and this kind of ties into what I always ask every survivor that comes on my show. I always close with this. You are now the parent. It's no longer your mom and dad. It's you.
Yep.
You have a baby in your arms, and that baby is you. So I want you to close your eyes right now, and I want you to talk to this baby and tell him everything that you want to tell him. To tell Brian.
I would just say it's all worth it. It's all been, when you think about it, at the end of the day, I was asked one time, if I could go back in time, would I? And it was in a group of survivors. And I said no. And everybody in that room there was just like a stunned silence. And you could tell everybody was just like, I don't even know what you could tell they were like, they didn't even know what to do with that. And so she was like, why? And my answer was, because I'm so proud of who I've become.
Oh, so true. I mean, it made you into the person that you are today. It was hell, but
I fought like the devil to get here.
Right.
I'm not going to give it up on a lurk.
Right.
And I mean, if you could tell me I could go back and change it and still be who I am today, that might be a different caveat. You know what I mean? But I just know that I fought like hell to get here.
Right.
I fought like hell to now save other survivors. I fought like hell to have these conversations. And I would say this to do this is because there's a kid sitting in a house somewhere that thinks they're all alone, that thinks that this has only ever happened to them, and that think that it's never going to get better. And I'll tell you, my life is not, I'm, I suffer from depression. I'm lonely as hell. I've never been in a very long, very serious relationship. I can honestly say I've never known love in my life. But my life isn't better than it was.
And I'm sure you appreciate the freedom every day. Every day you appreciate that freedom. You're free.
Yep.
And then you can help other people with your experience had you not gone through it. And the list can go on. And it is who we are today.
I have met some of the bravest people on this planet. You know what I mean? Like, and some of them are still junkies, and some of them are still alcoholics, and some of them are every day starting to fight for their sobriety. And those are some of the most badass people on the planet. And it's been an honor to get to know every one of them. Like James Swift. You know what I mean? Like Miss Fifi is just badass. You know what I mean? Like
he is amazing, strong, just like you. You're strong, and I am so proud of you for overcoming it. And death row. I mean, all of the survivors that have gone through what you have gone through are on death row.
Yep. There were choices, and there were ways it could have gone that way. But it was, I don't know if it was just the ever loving hope or whatnot, but I didn't have kids in the 80s because I didn't have kids at all, because in the 80s I was told that because I was a sex abuse survivor, I was going to be a pedophile. That's what I was told. I mean, you were told the same thing.
Sorry, you were told that by a therapist? Who were you told that by?
Society said that for the longest time, that if you
I just couldn't imagine a therapist saying that. So, but then you never know. Just society sees that. Yes.
Yeah, and so I never had kids because of that, because I was scared to death to have kids, because I was like, that's not going to happen. I'm this, you know what I mean? And now I'm in my mid 40s, and I'm thinking to myself, God, it'd be great to have a kid. But then it's like, well, Brian, you haven't even had a serious relationship. You know what I mean? So those are the things that, that still get to you. But
I still think that you would be a very good parent because you know what not to do. And I think that it could be a benefit too, because you know all of the details of what you shouldn't do, and then how you want it to be treated with positive reinforcement. I'm proud of you. Keep going. I appreciate everything you do. All of the things that you wanted done to you. I mean,
one of the funniest things I ever heard was one of my friends was like, Brian, you'd be a great parent. Your kids would hate you. I was like, what are you talking about? He's just like, because you would be the dad. He's like, you would be the dad that when your kid was sneaking out, you would be out his window and look at him and be like, you're grounded for another 2 weeks because I had left a half hour ago. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like as the kid's just like, I can't get away with nothing. Like, yeah, put the pot in the bag. You know what I mean? Like, because I've been there. I know exactly what to look for. So.
Well, it was such a pleasure talking to you, Brian, and just an honor, and to get to know you and about your book. And how do we get a hold of the art class online?
So the best thing to do is go to Survivor Nights, KNIGHT, on Facebook. Message me, and you can find out when our upcoming events are, when we're holding a group class, and those kinds of things. We can put it all together.
Awesome. And now is the time. Now is the time to do all of this.
Yep.
So thank you so much for helping these kids. I appreciate you. You're an amazing person.
am Janine Miller, and this is Peace is a Victory.